Pixel Sift.
Hello and welcome to Pixel Sift. My name is Mitch and joining me is my co-host Daniel.
Hello, it's been a while, Mitch.
I know you've been away, but I trust Ninja School is going well.
Yeah, Ninja School is going very well. I'm back now, so...
Nice. All right, enough about Ninja School. Each and every episode, we introduce you to a new creator and of interactive media and find out what it takes to make these games that you love.
And in this episode, we'll be taking a closer look at Webbed, and joining us are the developers of the game Neville and Noah Seymour from Sbug Games, based in Queensland. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to find out more. Let's jump in.
Australia's best video game podcast.
Subscribe to Pixel Sift on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever podcasts are found.
Now, Webbed is the latest creation from Sbug. It's a game about a cute spider on a mission to save her boyfriend. So, Riley and Noah, how would you describe the game?
That pretty much sums it up. It's you play as a cute little spider, you swing around, you build webs, you occasionally eat some flies, and you make friends with other bugs to get help and save your boyfriend from a big bowerbird.
That's pretty good. That's the elevator pitch.
So you make friends with the bugs, but you're also eating flies. How does that diplomacy work?
There is a fly in the game who's not a big fan of you eating the other flies. His name is the Fly Lord, and there's some strange relationships there, but most of the other bugs you're on good terms with.
What were some of the influences of the game's design?
I guess I could just point out like where it comes from. So Web started off as a 2D demake of Just Cause 2. That's like one of the main influences. So from that we get like the basic grappling two objects together and some little parachute mechanics and the laser eyes. And then on top of that, you know, we got some influences from Spider-Man, and I know Noah's taken a lot of influence from...
I love spiders, and so, like, I've just got a big old book of spiders right here that I got to help me identify the spiders in my backyard. And so I just... That, and exploring what native wildlife we have here. Every bug in the game is inspired by a real-life bug. So Australian wildlife is a big inspiration, as well as a fun game that's like 2D Just Cause. Used to be, at least.
Is there a particular spider species that she's based on?
The player character is a laser spider, which is... loosely, it's a member of the peacock spider family, but it isn't a specific real-life peacock spider. The player spider and her boyfriend are both the same species, of course. And yeah, they draw some influence from peacock spiders, but just generally jumping spiders, and they can shoot lasers from their eyes.
The boyfriend in particular is inspired by Maratis volans and Maratis gemifer combined together, which is what Riley told me. I just had to look up what we've got a document of bug facts for which each bug was based off that I did up, so I didn't have to remember off by heart, so I could read it whenever that question comes up. The player character is made up whole cloth based off of this made up or combination boyfriend peacock spider.
And on that note, with all of the spider research, could you tell us a little bit about the Arachnophobia mode that's in the game?
Yeah, so we have an Arachnophobia mode. It turns all the spiders in the game into friendly little blobs that roll around. It's just the spiders, not the other bugs, but we had enough people mention when we were initially showing things off that, like, wow, they thought this game was really cool and really cute, but they're just too afraid of spiders to play it. Like, even with the cartoony pixel art graphic style, it's still just too much like a real spider. So I spent a day and added the Arachnophobia mode to turn everything into blobs, which was not too difficult, but it's a pretty fun mode because you get some good momentum from the squishy blobs and stuff like just swinging about.
And functionally, it's no different, yeah?
Yeah.
Because the spider was already a blob or a ball, just with some legs that animated in front of it.
Yeah, I was about to ask if the blob itself changed how the game played at all, but I'm guessing functionally it's just the same thing. It just aesthetically looks different.
Yeah, though I do think that like the aesthetic difference is enough to make you play it differently, just a little bit. Like you're probably not gonna treat walking around the same way when you're rolling on your head as when you're scuttling as a spider. It's just, it feels a little bit different to play as the blob, despite all of the physics in the background being identical.
I did notice that the game has a very powerful physics engine. Was that difficult to work with?
No, we just use Game Maker's built-in physics for most things. The web physics is a little bit more hacked together on top of that, but all of the ways that the like objects and stuff move around are just, it's box 2D physics is what it is. It's what Game Maker has built in by default.
One thing, when I was playing the game, I kept getting so surprised that you can shoot lasers, and I always forget to shoot lasers either at walls or to destroy my own webs or anything like that. And you mentioned earlier that Just Cause was a big influence on that. But can you talk a little bit about how Webbed evolved from the original prototype Laser Spider Playground?
So Laser Spider Playground is the prototype that I have on my H page at the moment. And it was basically just a grappling hook and a spider controller. And like it's there's no levels or anything in it. And I started off just wanting to make that Just Cause demake. And that was about as far as I got with it. This, like, I realized that you could attach a grappling hook to another grappling hook, and that was a cool mechanic to make a spider web with. So then I made a little player spider, and that was about where I all I could get up to without Noah coming in at that point.
I saw that and it was like, you just need a few more things and you can start making levels with this, which is like a place you can't put webs, a place I can't stand, and that makes me value an end position over a start position just by, it took me more work to get there, and it was dangerous to get there, so there was a challenge involved. And so suddenly I can make a game out of that, or we can make a game out of that, which is not what I was going for when I was suggesting. I was just like, oh, here, this is what you can do next. And then Riley went away and did it. And then like a month later was like, here they are. Here's the ice blocks and the big metal spikes. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was like, I want to make levels for this. And then, yeah, just picked up from there.
So then we started working together on it. And it quickly went from being just like a little thing that we were both working on in our spare time, and then it kind of took off on Twitter and Reddit a little bit super fast, and then we got funding for it, and then it's like, okay, this is our is our project now. This is like what we're making as a game. At that point, I ditched the vampire game I was working on because it was much more fun. Everyone enjoyed this game a lot more.
The laser eyes concept actually reminds me a lot of the character Eve from WALL-E, like a very cute character, but with a very violent weapon.
It always catches me off guard though, just the bassy thump noise every time I press E, and it goes. I'm like, oh my god! You're not expecting it at all from this little tiny cute.
And how she kind of reacts to the recoil of her eyes.
Yeah, she just slides back every time.
That's really important from a game design perspective, though. Like, you need it to feel thumpy, because otherwise you wouldn't even realize that you can kick objects around with it. Like, it's one of your main tools for a lot of the physics puzzles in the game is using your laser eyes to kick objects into the place that you need them. And if it just felt like a little pew pew, a little laser noise, or you didn't have massive recoil on yourself, it wouldn't feel right to be kicking objects the same size as you around.
You briefly mentioned you got funding very early in the design process. What was that like? Yeah,
we just lucked out hugely, I think. We didn't have to pitch it to any publishers or anything, basically, I made a post on Reddit showing off some of the early web physics, basically just after we implemented like curving webs, which is just an aesthetic thing, but it made the webs feel a lot more natural rather than just like straight lines between everything. And that got to like the top post on Reddit for like half an hour until I was banned from posting on our gaming for self-promotion. But in that time, Will Nyland from Landfall Studios messaged me and was like, "This is cool. Do you have funding for it? Do you want us to fund it?" And just they're just funding other, because they've been a very successful indie studio. They're funding other indie game projects, and it just kind of not much more questions after that. Just like, people seem to like this game, so do you want money to make it? Yeah, very lucky. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time for that, I think.
Did the massive response on social media affect the way you were making the game?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, yes, it must have. But, like, it's not like it was a very steady increase in response, like, throughout development. So it's not like there was one thing where it suddenly went from no one watching the development of this game to lots of people following it. So, like, I'm sure we would have made a different game if there was nobody, like, looking at the GIFs on Twitter and nobody giving us good feedback along the way. But, like, I don't know how it would be different because it was just that.
I mean, it probably wouldn't have an arachnophobia mode if people didn't talk about that. I feel like it probably would be at least a third shorter.
I wouldn't have dug in my heels so much about the laser eyes. Might have compromised on that, but that is...
We're so glad you didn't.
It's a very controversial feature that a lot of people are very mad about, and I disagree.
They just think it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And they...
In a game with robot ants and and magical islands in the sky.
So can you tell us more about that pushback and how you dealt with people of that kind of criticism of one of the main mechanics of your game, laser eyes?
Oh, I don't think anyone's like
That's
super
serious.
concerned about it. There were a couple of posts on Steam when the demo came out that were like, this is unrealistic. And then the biggest, and yeah, obviously it's unrealistic. There are many unrealistic things about this game. This is not a nature simulation. But one of the main posts that is still, I think, the post with the most comments on the Steam forum by far was just, laser eyes, are you for or against right here? And it was just somebody just drumming up support for like, no, it must be venom blasts or some sort of web shot like Spider-Man, like that, as if that would be more realistic than the laser eyes.
Because jumping spiders can definitely do that.
Yeah. Jumping spiders barely even weave webs in real life.
Yeah.
It does make for a good rage quit moment, because I did find myself when I was playing it last night when I was just had webs everywhere and a piece of the robot ant wasn't going where I wanted it to go, and I couldn't figure it out. I just held down the button and then I just blew everything away. I was just like, ah! I just took everything out. I just reset everything to normal. It was quite cathartic.
It's a reset button.
Yeah, it was great. It was, and it's auto as well. It's like a full auto laser eye. That's great.
With the actual development of the game and some of the social media, I guess, pushback, have there been any other things that have been particularly challenging with developing Webbed?
I mean, the only thing coming to my mind is we redesigned the final few levels like 3 times, or I did, because that was my work, the level designer. So like just trying to get those right and feeling good for like a finale, but also not too difficult. It took a bit. I made a few levels that just kept not being fun or easy enough to understand. So
I think I programmed like 3 different like significant mechanics for those levels that just didn't end up working.
Could you talk a bit about those mechanics at all? What did you have in mind?
Those levels were going to be all about like like the finale takes place in a floating island, like in the sky, like a flying island. That is where the bowerbird has kidnapped your boyfriend, and those levels were going to be about like using those floating rocks in a cool way to like hide and dodge some dangers, which I don't want to get too into without spoilers, but but the floating rocks just ended up being too difficult to control with the physics engine, and
people didn't understand them when they were working properly with the physics engine.
Yeah. People didn't realize how to get onto the rocks and how to stay on them without falling off. Or
because like if you knew what to do, pretty easy to do. Because like Riley and I knew what to do, but then putting it in the hands of someone who didn't have that conversation about what should this level be about, they're like, I don't know, and lucked through it, or didn't luck through it and just got frustrated and stopped playing in the last level.
Basically, I think what we learned from that is don't introduce new major mechanics in the last like 5% of the game.
I was just thinking to Noah, as a level designer, what sort of things are you thinking about throughout the progression of the story? And as far as pacing goes, I'm really interested to know different beats, I guess, or sections that you would have in this game.
So much. I mean, I've got a paper map that I've just pulled down recently. This is the whole beetle section. I mean, not all of it, but like I drew this out before I'd even started working on it, thinking about puzzles that could be in each room, because this whole beetle section was inspired by, it was about, what if we did some Half-Life style puzzles, but also everything was mostly mud, and so it was slippery, less web surfaces, and more physics-based puzzles like seesaws and elevators and gear jams and stuff. And so thinking about that, it was like, things that are fun to do across that is trying to get up a hill with momentum and then trying to climb when you have limited spaces to grab onto. And so, as you can see, there's a bunch of, where's the camera? There's like steep inclines and then like dips into water, and then you have to go up a shaft, and there's a few of them, and then there's like a water seesaw puzzle here. So that's what I'm thinking about is, where is this going? What's the whole focus of this area? Because like bees is swinging, ants is button and cog puzzles, and beetles was physics puzzles. And so building those up in ways that you understand what each one will be next by building on ideas, because you've got first seesaw, water seesaw. We understand things can weigh down, so we have an elevator pulley later. Also, each one of those is in a space that's safe, so you don't have to have any pressures and time pressures on understanding them, which is, again, what we made a mistake with in the final level, was there is a time pressure. It's a lot of things that I'm thinking about so much as I'm drawing scribbles on a piece of paper, to then, once that's done, I was like, cool, I have an understanding of what each room will be now.
Yeah, of course. I find all this really interesting, because I was just thinking, as far as developing the story goes versus the levels, do you approach it as a mixture of thinking about the mechanics that you could promote a little bit more in a certain section, maybe more use of the laser or more creative ways of spinning webs, and does that tie into the story, or does the story come first and then you sort of plan it out from there?
It sort of builds together. I know we talked really early on, before we'd like even started building proper levels, was like the whole bees section, like here's the paper map for the bees section, was the first one we made, and it was originally just going to be a demo to send out before we even got funding, I think. And so that was just like, we love the swinging, and we want some more weaving sections in there as well. And so the whole thing's around mostly swinging and weaving, which is about limiting spaces you can stand on, so you're forced to just keep swinging along, and also making it look like a treetop.
Yeah, and it was the fact that we wanted it to be focused around that swinging mechanic that made us go like, well, where does that make most sense? Is like in the treetops, and the sort of creatures we can meet along the way in that case is bees, because they're flying around the trees, and the fact and with bees we've got like a quest to help them collect pollen, so it'll all just kind of like back and forth there.
What do you both hope that people take away from Webbed when they actually get to experience it themselves?
I hope they enjoy swinging and weaving webs, because I still do. I'm still going through it and still enjoying it, even though I've played it so many times all the way through.
I hope they like get a deeper understanding for the little critters in the bush that don't get enough recognition. I like kind of joking there because it's very cartoony, but like after making this game, I am genuinely like less afraid of spiders now, and like bugs feel more like animals that are cute rather than creepy crawlies, and I like that. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, seeing some people go in their backyards and looking at the spiders that have been there the whole time, but like, you know, normally kept away from, which still keep reasonable distance, but you can look at them and they're fine. Like the little dude just hanging out in the web.
Is that something you think about, like possibly the therapeutic possibility of your game?
Yeah, I do hope it can help some people with like some like of course we've got the arachnophobia mode in case, you know, you have a level of arachnophobia that just means like you can't look at anything that is approximating a spider. But I do also hope that like we've had enough people who've gone like I terrified of spiders, but this spider in particular is cute and I can handle that. And then we have some other spiders in the game that are maybe a little less cute than the player spider, but they're still friendly. They're still not a threat at all in the game, and just having that, like being in that that fiction for a little while to maybe give you some vicarious exposure to creepy crawlies and not where you're not thinking of them as a threat and you're just going like, oh, these are friends. Hope that bleeds over into real life a little bit.
I noticed there were quite a few language options in the settings of the game. What was it like localizing it to all these different languages?
Not super difficult. We got a localization company to do all of that for us. So we have 9 languages in the game, including English. And yeah, we basically, we had a massive spreadsheet of all the text in the game, and we sent that over to the localization company, and we just got the translated text. And there's been a bit of back and forth. Like the Japanese translation was initially like too advanced for the audience that we want the game to be for. So we've got a new, like, more child-friendly version of that now. But yeah, it's been pretty easy. Expensive though, so like that's the other side of that. If it's easy to do, it's not cheap.
So with the, I guess, the development of the actual game from going from not, I guess, predicting that it would blow up so huge on Reddit and to getting funding and everything, and how it changed, because you were mentioning you were working on a vampire game beforehand. Is there one lesson that you learned while making Web that you guys will both carry throughout your career?
I know I want to write a post-mortem if I can in the next few weeks, because in my time at university studying game design, it was really important to look back on a project after it was done to then package up everything I learned and be like, okay, so this is actually the lesson I learned, or I learned a few lessons, of course, but like I haven't thought about that yet because it's not out yet. I haven't written it yet, so I can answer that later, probably.
No, that's totally fair. I think that all that is just information as well to look back on a project such as this, and once you're actually not in it anymore, you can have that level of disconnect in a way to really look at it objectively and say, this and this and this worked, and maybe more lasers in the future or something like that. You know?
Like, there's certainly a lot of little things I've learned along the way of like just in terms of like practical making games, because this is only really the second game I've released. Like just skills. There's a lot I've learned a lot along the way, but I'm not sure that there's like a particular big lesson I can think of yet.
again, when I play the game, I'm always so fascinated by the laser mechanic because everything else seems pretty grounded as far as the actual art style itself goes. It's a bit cartoony, but everything as far as proportions and stuff go still kind of feel like a real world counterpart, if that makes sense. So I suppose, was balancing the juxtaposition between cartoony versus realism something that you intended to go for, or was it just sort of, did it kind of just happen?
Yeah, that was definitely intentional. Like, all of the characters in the game they're cartoony, but I've tried really hard to keep them still be grounded in like particular sorts of insects and stuff. Like every bug in the game has at least one real world counterpart, which is like what all of it is modeled on. But yeah, we did also want to have it be quite cartoony, and like nothing is to scale at all.
The beetles are meant to be smaller than like the ants in real life.
Yeah.
If we use ants as a reference, most things are meant to be smaller than the ants.
Yeah. The ants are based on like bulldog ants, which are massive. They're huge ants, but they're also ants with a lot of personality, which is why like I chose them to be the ants in this game. Whereas like peacock spiders are the tiniest little things in the world. They're like less than a millimeter across sometimes, but in this game, they're the same size as these massive ants. So
Now we've come to the end of our episode. If you're keen to learn more about Webbed, you can hit the links in the description of this episode or on your podcast player, or you can check it out on Steam where you can wishlist the game. Riley, Noah, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thank you.
thank you.
Pixel Sift is produced by Fiona Bartholomaeus, Nicholas Kennedy, Daniel Ang, Sarah Ireland, Vivian Thum, and Adam Christou. Gianni Di Giovanni is our executive producer, and my name is Mitch. I am the senior producer. As always, links can be found in the show notes of our show, of the website as well, pixelsift.com.au. And if you can give us a follow on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, you can find us at Pixel Sift on all those sites. That's Pixel Sift on your social media.
And you can also come down on Discord. We'd love to have you there. That's pixelsift.com.au/Discord, where you can share your creative work, talk about topics and games and anything else. pixelsift.com.au/Discord. And while you're there, could we also ask you for one more favor? The number one free thing you can do to support us is to share the show. So word of mouth is super important to indie podcasts like this one, so please let your friends know if you reckon they'll enjoy our content. To make it easy for them to take part in the show, just send them a link, and I promise we will love you forever for it.
That's all for this week. Thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next time.